Hi everyone, and welcome to the review of the predictions that I made for the week of August 26, 2019. So as far as the market direction was concerned, the Monday through Thursday predictions were correct, and Friday predictions, I predicted that the market would go down, and the actual performance was mixed. Nasdaq was down and Dow Jones was up. Other predictions, something interesting, I finally saw some news about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the US Supreme Court Justice, and my previous predictions some weeks back were that she would experience health concerns in May and June of 2019, and I haven't really heard much about that, but just last week I saw that there was news that in July she undergone a biopsy, and I guess they discovered some tumor, and subsequently she had it removed. So I'm not sure if specifically in May and June whether or not she was experiencing time where she was feeling unwell or busy, but obviously there were some issues with her health that required her to seek health within weeks of that time frame that I gave. So far I guess she's doing well and recovering, and I don't have any specific predictions for her moving forward. I'll have to look at her horoscope again. So let's see. So some other ongoing predictions that I have to do with Saturn conjunct Pluto and Capricorn. So those would coincide with geopolitical changes, changes in the governmental structures or power shifts as far as who the leaders are, leaders passing away, increased volcanic activity and earthquakes, collapse of old buildings, and also Pluto has to do with nuclear power, so we would expect maybe changes in the either nuclear weapons, power plants, and things of that nature, maybe some accidents or dismantling of old buildings, or the buildings, crashing by themselves, or building of some new or improving infrastructure that is again meant to stand for a long time, etc., etc. So this is something that is an ongoing influence, will continue from 2019 through 2020, and we do at least, I do see a lot of news on that, specifically last week, and I guess even the prior week. I actually forgot to mention that there was news about billionaire David Koch, one of the world's richest individuals, dying at the age of 79. But then last week there was also another famous person, the Ferdinand Piech, I guess the pronunciation is, iconic figure at Volkswagen, died in 82. There's also interesting news. Indonesia is considering moving their capital from Jakarta to Borneo, so that would be kind of along the lines of shifts in basically borders of the countries, and this is again a move that the country is making by themselves, but this time again tense aspects between Pluto and Saturn often coincide with forceful changes in like I said, borders or leaders, etc. So another set of news, again, kind of a manifestation of this aspect. I didn't see any truly significant, I guess, explosions or earthquakes or volcanic explosions, but again, there was some news along those lines where there were some explosions in Mexico on the 26th. There was a volcanic eruption that sent smoke and ash 1.5 kilometers into sky. There was also Stromboli volcano eruption in Italy, and there were some 6 point plus magnitude earthquakes in Japan, USA, in Oregon, and also in Fiji. Another ongoing prediction that I had, which is going to be sort of in place through about the end of September, maybe early October, has to do with Jupiter squaring Neptune, and that, and again in the signs of Pisces and Sagittarius, which would have to do with increased wet weather, increased focus on things like oil, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, excess of either overabundance of supplies or problems with shipments, problems with maybe crossing the borders because of some legal issues, etc. Increased, focus on the international negotiations. So there were quite a few news along the lines of, pharmaceuticals, oil, etc. Of course, we had just recently the Hurricane Dorian that happened, grew, I guess, to the category 5, found Bahamas, causing a lot of damage. Also on the 26th of August, there was some news from Madrid, Spain, about the massive hailstorm that flooded the city, and I guess cars were, washed away, and there was some damage from that. On also on the same day, on the 26th, in the markets, oil was down nearly 2%, I guess because of the trade war, rattling the confidence of investors. On the same day, again, news on the 26th of August, there was some news about Iran considering to revive the old pipeline across Iraq into Syria because of some, I guess, concerns about the tensions and related to the Hormuz Strait. And there was some healthcare news. For example, the Purdue Pharma is in discussion to basically settle some opioid lawsuits that have contributed to opioid epidemic, I guess, in the US, and that might be worth 10 to 12 billion. There was also a finding for Johnson & Johnson that were found to be liable in Oklahoma opioid epidemic lawsuit, and for 572 million, which significant is, I guess it's lower than maybe was expected. Let's see. And there was also some news about Phyllis Morris being in merger talks with Altria, the makes of e-cigarettes, I believe. And of course, there was also some news about just, the swine flu, the ongoing Ebola epidemic, which apparently is the second largest, worst, or the second deadliest on record. There was also increased a number of cases of measles in the US, and it is, I guess, the worst outbreak in the US since '92. And globally, apparently the number of measles cases is 3 times worse, 3 times greater than previous year, according to the World Health Organization. There are also some other news, which again, may not be something that happens like once a year, but just again, abundance of news in the media, and I believe it will continue into September. Some other tidbits: 12 killed and dozens injured in the explosion at the Indian chemical factory. And some news, again, I'm sure the study wasn't going for some time, but again, happened to be published last week about the rare genetic mutation that is found in patients with a particular type of muscular dystrophy. Apparently, it's actually happened to be making them resistant, or their lymphocytes in their blood resistant to HIV. So I guess the study involved making the testing of that, but the study was also citing cases where basically marrow bone from patients that have that mutated particular gene, and when that marrow transplant was given to HIV patients, they were able to cure HIV in those patients. So again, I'm sure the study wasn't going for a long time. It's just that that is something that came up on Science Daily, specifically last week. Let's see, so some other news that I predicted that were more specific rather than these two ongoing kind of long-term influences were for August 26th through 28th, that we may hear about athletes or sports teams or some sports-related businesses, and that their value may change, especially that maybe their prices, earnings may increase, or some athlete may sign a really large contract. So what I saw was the article on 26th of August that this year's apparently US Open prize money is at record 57 million. And again, the winner will take almost $4 million. Then there was also news on 8/27 that the energy group, I believe it's pronounced Ineos, run by British billionaire Jim Ratcliffe, is expanding their sports empire with takeover of a French League One football club. Let's see, and this was something that actually came up in the early September rather than August 26th to 28th, but I guess close enough. Interesting piece of news on September 2nd. There was news that there's a boxer, Pacquiao, launched world's first celebrity cryptocurrency PAC tokens. That's pretty brilliant. And then on September 3rd, there's news that National Basketball Association in the US, they're looking to they basically saw that the valuation of their franchises is soaring, and they're thinking of basically creating an investment vehicle where they could basically sell some minority shares of individual teams to, I guess, individual investors. Let's see, so then specifically for Monday 26th, I was predicting that there might be increased focus on like service industries such as like nurses, teachers, firefighters, etc. And in particularly, I thought that I would be focusing on like education industry, either students, teachers, and there might be even some sort of like strikes, to improve working conditions, etc. And I thought, again, the reason for specifically thinking of education, teachers, and students is because, again, this has to do with planet Mercury and also Virgo, sign that's ruled by Mercury, being sort of heavily populated. Interestingly, I didn't see that, which again, maybe I'm just missing something, but I did see news about the over 20,000 AT&T workers in the South, I guess, have been striking over the weekend prior to August 26, Monday. And I thought that it's interesting because AT&T obviously is a company that has to do with communication. Communication is also ruled by Mercury. So that's just, I guess I didn't specifically predict that, but it is interesting to know that it's sort of along the same lines, again, involvement of Mercury and people who are basically service. I would still classify them as service, supportive kind of workers. Obviously, we're not talking about CEOs or, heads of the company striking, but rather the, average workers. Let's see. So there's also, like I said, there was also some news focused on the nuclear power and also removing, old either buildings or repairing old infrastructure. That's something that you would expect increased sort of manifestation with Pluto conjuncting Saturn. And indeed, last week there's some news on August 31st, rather, in France, that after decades in development and close to like 730 million euro in investments, France decided to scrap the plans for the 4th generation nuclear reactors. And another nuclear reactor related news was that Japan's TEPCO decided, or rather they're considering, to mothball reactors at the world's biggest nuclear plant. So that's at the, I guess, Kashiwazaki Kariwa power plant, and which happens to be the biggest nuclear plant, I guess, by capacity. And even though they restarted, I guess, 2 of the reactors 2 years ago, or rather, I guess, within 5 years of restarting 2 of the reactors at the site. So I guess it hasn't been restarted that long ago, but they're thinking of basically mothballing it at this time. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's, I guess, for Japan it might make a big difference because obviously they need the power. So another prediction that I was making, that I made last week, is that there would be some either unusual surprises or some unusual news related to banks and finance, or news about investors kind of basically making riskier choices than usual, or increased interest in investing in cryptocurrencies or in banks or financial institutions that appear to be kind of more cutting edge, high tech, or about institutions themselves, financial institutions increasingly I guess, investing in like cybersecurity, AI, or something high-tech digital solutions of some sort, or innovative approaches to solving issues related to tracking financial transactions and improving financial transparency. So what I did see on 8/26 is there was news about a Swiss financial regulator basically awarding banking and securities dealer licenses to two new quote-unquote crypto banks, SEBA and Signum. And so they were cleared to operate digital securities, and there was also the same authority of FINMA. They also came up and they issued some new rules on how their FINMA regulated entities should be basically applying anti-money laundering regulations. So, and that to me does speak to kind of improving transparency and making sure that, I guess, that there's safer and more, I guess, transparent, the financial transactions occur in a more safer and kind of more transparent environment. So I'd say that is related to that prediction. And interestingly also, there was news last week that starting September 1st, companies in New Zealand can begin paying their employees in cryptocurrencies. So let's see, and that has to do with, basically prediction was based on some faster moving planets making aspects to Uranus that happens to be going through Taurus and will be going through Taurus for several years. And Uranus has to do with, again, anything that's digital, high-tech, AI, cyber anything, digital, electronic anything. And of course Taurus has to do with things like farming and, say, singing, but also specifically finance and business. So we will see definitely more innovations in those areas and kind of financial institutions becoming more and more sort of tech savvy, and financial services offered online will improve and increase. But when faster moving planets such as Mars and others make aspects to Uranus by transits, for example, we will hear about more specific manifestations such as, licenses are granted or some new approaches officially implemented, etc. I also made a prediction again for Monday that there might be some sort of a turnabout, again, related to like financial, either developments or financial institutions. And there was some news about the Paragon cannabis-focused company that previously had completed their initial coin offering, but then subsequently it was determined to be offering unregistered securities by SEC. And as of Monday, I guess they had begun accepting applications for investor refunds. So that ties with that turnabout, and maybe, I'm not sure how surprising it was, but a turnabout in some sort of a financial developments. So let's see, on another set of news that I had for August 26th through 28th, that there might be surprising news about like guns, weapons, or athletes, sports teams, as I said before, and that, let's see, that there may be basically some concerns about the athletes' like health, or basically that there may be concerns about like either devices that go really fast and may explode and burn. And we did have news, unfortunate news, about a US driver, Jesse Combs, who was killed trying to break the land speed record in some sort of a jet-powered car or something like that. And unfortunately, there was also news about a 22-year-old driver from France who had basically died in a car crash at the Belgium Grand Prix. And that, I believe, was on 8/31st. So my specific prediction was, which those you can find in written form that maybe is easier to follow at my blog at plastunka.com. So what I wrote was that some fighter, racer, or some other tough macho athlete may be prominently featured in the news. The focus may be on their health and safety, and or possibly there may be general increased news about the need to improve safety of athletes or gun safety. And so that was my prediction for August 30th. And JC Combs, like I said, female, racer who was named one of the fastest, or rather the fastest woman on 4 wheels. She died on 8:29, and the Formula 2 driver Antoine Hubert died on 8/31st. And of course on 8/31st in US and Texas there was also this mass drive-by shooting where 7 were killed, as well as the gunman is also dead. So so I would say again another sort of manifestation of these of the aspects that I was looking for. And I didn't really see anything in the news, again looking just kind of quickly, about my prediction about, say, innovative animal care or innovation as far as like helping animals by using, I don't know, electricity, or vice versa, using, some sort of way of gathering energy from either farming or animals to produce electricity. I'm sure things exist, but I didn't see anything in the news that would be some sort of new innovative change. I did see an article in, again, Science Daily from 8/27 that some scientists from RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia, have developed a cost-effective and scalable method to basically laser print fabric and, like, 10 by 10 centimeter small patches, where that patch would be waterproof, stretchable, and readily integrated with energy harvesting technologies. And again, I'm sure this is a study that would have been going on for a while. It's just, again, I'm looking for what's in the headlines for a given time that would coincide with particular sort of astrological transits, and that was something that I saw. So I guess that's pretty much it. If you can think of any other interesting things that maybe I mentioned in my predictions that came true, or vice versa, something that I mentioned that I was expecting to come true and it didn't, or even the opposite thing have happened, so please do feel free to mention that, and or any other questions, and I'll catch you guys later. So have fun and hope you enjoyed this. Bye.